Hello, and thank you for joining us at Peace Through Action USA. If this is your first time with us, our mission is to achieve peace between people and within communities in the United States by promoting caring action. We activate and equip Americans to implement practical, peaceful solutions to aggression and violence in their communities and our country. Our mission activities contribute to the advancement of a nation abundant with peaceful people, applying peaceful practices, and creating peaceful places. One of the ways that we achieve this is through our featured Peacebuilders initiative, which is an expression of our belief that all of us can be peace builders. Very few of us will reach the heights of Gandhi or MLK or Desmond Tutu, but each of us can do something for peace. So today we have with us our featured peace builder for this month, Maryanna Lanham, Executive Director of the Dream Queen Foundation, whose mission is to offer career and leadership development training in a safe space for women and teen girls. So Maryanna, we're happy to have you with us today. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. I want to first ask if you can tell us more about the Dream Queen Foundation and kind of describe your role.
Okay. So the Drag Queen Foundation, we have basically three programs under our umbrella and are working to expand that. So the first one is our Gals Lead Teen Mentorship and Leadership Program, which is a curriculum, about 30 weeks, based on four pillars: know yourself, dream big, overcome obstacles, and take action. We facilitate those clubs in after school programs, community programs, as well as our weekend retreats. Right now, we are primarily in Southern Maryland, St. Mary's, Calvert, and Charles, and are working to create a plan for expansion. The second piece, which is really important, is the training. So we have a certified training for people who want to become mentors and facilitators, where it's a 1 day, 8 hour training. And a lot of it is around leaving your biases behind and how to talk to somebody in middle or high school and how to come into the safe space so that you're heard and seen and they are heard and seen. And a lot of times that is energy, and just kind of leaving things behind. And sometimes it's more specific, and making sure that they, as those who are going into these spaces with between 10 and 25 girls, have the support they need ongoing. Because we know that different situations, as we've spoken before, within, each of the clubs, it comes out of nowhere. And, for us to be able to share with all the other clubs the information is really important. So the third thing is our women's group. We are actually in the process of reprogramming that portion, from a networking more into a collective. So it's a collective of passionate, peaceful, purpose-filled women coming together to help uplift each other, to be in a space of understanding and learning, and also where we can have difficult conversations that make us uncomfortable, but know that our opinion matters and that we're not going to go into a he, she, this, that kind of conversation. So that's kind of the short of the three things that we're working on right now.
That's all really excellent. I think that it speaks to me and just what you were saying about how you're working with young girls. I know that when I was a young person in school, I could have really benefited from having a conversation about setting boundaries, about consent, about learning to express myself in a meaningful way. I mean, that's all very difficult when you're young, and if you can really learn that when you're young, it becomes that much easier when you get older. So I applaud that effort that you're doing in that work. And I'm curious to hear if you could share, as I said in the introduction, of course, Peace Through Action is really focused on promoting peace. How does this work that you're doing with Dream Queen Foundation, how do you see that promoting peace in your community?
It's a great question. I feel as though it promotes peace through cutting the usual way of thinking for a middle schooler and the reactionary way that we all kind of are. Like we're waiting for somebody, we're waiting to talk, right? We're waiting for somebody to say something and you got something to say, and helping them take a step back. And like you said, the setting boundaries. And when you take a kid that comes from a very negative environment, many times their actions are negative, right? And terrible example, but the kid who's in their home, there is violence, probably is coming into school and they're bullying. Like that's how they're getting that out there, right? So if we can stop that and help the kid look inside and see that they are perfect and great and worthy, and no matter what situation they are in right now, because we can't help our circumstances, but we can help them make new decisions around it, and many times those decisions are going to be in a more positive and peaceful way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I hear that. It really resonates with me, the idea that, so much of what we see as harm that's perpetuated, it comes from a place of trauma, or comes from a place of lack of support. And if we can just provide that in some way, that we'll be able to really prevent those systems of harm in the future. I'm curious if you could speak, particularly a program that I know you offer that resonates with me is the Gals Lead program, because it sounds to me like that's a perfect example of how you're developing future peace builders.
Absolutely. So the Gals Lead mentorship and leadership program is a really creating that safe space for the young people to be able to express themselves and have open conversations that sometimes are a little uncomfortable, but giving them the space and allowing that. I think the other thing that's really positive within that is that we give them a lot of ownership. So it's their club. They choose the rules. They choose a lot of different things, like what kind of speakers do you want to have come in, you know, and our facilitators are facilitating this conversation, and it really does help when you talked about a little bit when you were in middle and high school. All of us thought, and I can make this blanket statement because I've talked to a lot of people. There was something wrong with us, and everybody else had it figured out.
Mhm.
Right? And so if you don't have space to talk about it in a group that is diverse, right? Your perspectives then change. So one of the big things for us is that we invite all girls, she, her, they, them. We do not target specific groups because we know the more diverse, the more learning it's going to have and the more perspectives are going to change. Because a lot of times in my life, I've seen it's usually a perspective that is causing this issue. And if we can stop and listen and primarily treat each other like everybody's a human, like a human person, like we all have feelings and thoughts and emotions, and we can't hide behind screens because this is what's causing these negative actions. And I feel that doing things in real life, sitting in a space with people who are not like you is what's going to cause that shift in peaceful action. Um, because the girls are going to see that the valedictorian and the kid that, is homeless or whatever it is, they have the same thought process of I call it head trash, all the stuff we tell ourselves that we're not worthy and we're not good enough and all of that, it exists within all of us. But if we can see our value as an individual, like we don't have to all be the same, and to learn their values, their passions, their strengths, it helps them create that sense of self where you're not always trying to be like everybody else. And it breaks my heart, um, especially with social media and everything now. I mean, it's just a constant bombardment of information telling you to be like everybody else or setting ideals that are not realistic, and really helping them change their decisions in the face of whatever the circumstances are, I think really helps a lot.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, it's kind of this duality of no, we're not all the same, and yet we are, and still
Exactly.
finding a place for yourself, and that sense of self that you described is so important when, as you said, you're constantly bombarded with the idea that you have to fit in, and
Yeah.
how do you be yourself in that noise? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I can tell, as you're speaking about this, that you're really passionate about it. I'm curious, like, when or how did you know that this was the kind of work you wanted to do?
That is a really interesting long story, but I'll try to make it because we don't have a ton of time. I volunteered with this organization since 2015 when they first launched the very first club at Great Mills High School. Um, I was on the board, I was a facilitator in a club, and I was running a women's group. So I was very involved in the organization. Well, then, of course, COVID hits. And just like a lot of organizations, you had to make a lot of decisions very quickly and figure out what the best next steps were. And we were on the verge of not existing. We had 3 people left on the board, including myself. A lot of the women had to step back and take care of their families, and that's perfectly fine and legitimate. At the same time, my father actually was having some really bad health issues. And so I was in Delaware and Maryland constantly. In late 21, I ended up moving my parents from Delaware down here in Southern Maryland so that I could be closer to them and not living back and forth. Anyway, all of that then in the I guess it was the fall of 21 while I'm doing that is now I'm unemployed. And I was a financial planner.
Hmm.
Okay. So I was with New York Life for 8 years. And I had a successful business. And things led to where they were, and I was out of my contract. I tried to stick with what I was doing with another organization. Didn't work out, and it felt like all the windows and doors were shutting,
Hmm.
and I leave and I call one of the women, from the organization, and I said, "I've been absent for a while, and I feel bad about it. I'm not supporting the girls. I'm not supporting our organization. Now I don't have a job, so I have plenty of time." And she was like, "You should just be the executive director." That's literally how it happened. And then I get a phone call like an hour later. She calls the other board member and they're like, "Yeah, we've decided you're not on the board anymore because you're going to be the executive director. You know what we're trying to do. You're passionate about what we do. And now you have the space to do it." And it literally was one of those things where God, universe, source, whatever your preference is, good old Gus, um, just it was something that I had to do. And it was scary and it's still scary. Um, and it's been a year and a half now. And incredibly, we now have 9 women on the board. We had 2 or 3 clubs kind of working very independently, and now we have 8 clubs working through the foundation. As well as last year, we did 3 trainings for women to go in to be facilitators. We have 18 trained facilitators who have gone through our program and are serving more than 150 girls. What?
It's incredible. How does it
Yeah,
feel to see that kind of growth happen?
it feels great. I feel like it's not enough, right? I feel like 150 girls is wonderful, and I'm glad that we're affecting their lives, but I know that the information and the programming that we do is transformational.
Yeah.
And however I can get it to more middle and high school girls, I would like to do that. Um, I know you guys are in Calvert County. We have 2 clubs there, one at the Adolescent Clubhouse and one in Calverton. It would be wonderful, I'm just gonna put it out into the universe, for us to be in the middle schools in Calvert next year, and to be able to bring the curriculum to them because 'cause they're the ones who are really struggling.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that story. I mean, that's really impactful to hear just your journey and how it feels like, you're in the place you're meant to be right now.
It's
So,
weird. I mean, when you're in the flow of what you're supposed to be doing, you realize what that feeling is compared to, you know, it almost felt like I was swimming upstream constantly trying to make it work and not realizing it's not gonna work work because that's not what you're supposed to be doing.
right, right. And the doors just closed and opened where they were supposed to.
Yeah,
It's
really
awesome.
did.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's an awesome
Mhm.
story, and so
Thank
glad that
you.
you found this place, and they found you, and a lot of amazing things are happening that we get to hear about. So, I want to go back to kind of before we uh, jumped into this recorded portion of the interview. We were talking casually about critical conversations and how important they are, and I'm curious if you could just say more about that. How would that necessity to have these critical conversations connect to peace building to you?
There's a couple pieces to that. I think number 1, a critical conversation is important, especially if you hear a rumor, right? So and so is talking about you from a third party, right? Um, to then instead of going into your feelings and assuming that that person is telling you the full story, that instead you go back to the original person and say, instead of going to them in a way, and this is where that whole crucial piece is, not, I heard you were talking about me, and really coming at the person, but saying, I heard this from this person, and I really want to verify with you. This is really hard for me to do because, and just putting it out there. What they told me really hurt. And I wanna know why whatever it is that I've done that would cause you to say those things, or maybe it was misinterpreted. And really coming at it in a place of growth and understanding versus that anger, right? And we talk to the girls a lot about those critical conversations as well, um, because it's we jump to conclusions. We as people, humans, jump to conclusions. We do. Like if somebody doesn't call you for a week, obviously you did something that makes them mad. And then you talk to them a week later and they're like, no, I wasn't feeling well. And really, I think the thing that we were talking about that's really, really important is assuming the best outcome instead of the worst outcome to whatever the situation is. Um, and looking at it through a lens of that other person is a person, and that whatever that situation is could be a learning piece for you. And to not go straight to, well, they hurt me, so now I'm going to hurt them.
Mhm.
Instead, this is hurting me. Let me talk to them. And I think that 90% of our problems will be solved if we stopped playing the game of telephone and hearing from so and so who said that so and so, and I saw this and blah, blah, blah. And it gets back to the other person, and it's so twisted that it's probably not the original scenario. And it's really just taking that step back and saying, okay, what are facts in this situation? And what is the story I'm creating?
Yeah. Yeah, that I mean, just the example you were giving, with I know for me, texting a friend and then not hearing from them for a week, it's difficult to push myself to just ask like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. Is everything okay? Instead of,
Yes.
well, I'm just gonna ignore them like they're ignoring me.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're having the same thought train that I was having, and that
Exactly.
fractures connection rather than builds it, right?
Exactly. And then a month later, you see them and you're like, the person's like, "Oh, I was ignoring you because I thought you didn't wanna talk to me," and you're like, Why did we do all of that?"
Right. Right.
Instead of assuming that somebody's just busy.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you for taking this time to have this conversation and share more about the important work you're doing, and hopefully, folks can take some things away from this conversation about how to live more peaceful practices, implement more peaceful practices in their daily lives. This is not the last time that we'll be seeing Mariana. We have coming up a virtual learning event on April 25th at 7 p.m., where we'll be gathering on Zoom to discuss social and emotional learning. This virtual learning opportunity and community discussion is designed to equip educators, parents, and caretakers with the tools to enhance emotional awareness and build resilience among youth. And we'll have some youth focused organizations like the Dream Queen Foundation joining us to review a broad range of programs, activities, and experiences related to SEL best practices. So participants will be able to leave with tools to model positive coping strategies and lead youth in navigating the complicated social and emotional aspects of their own lives. So I hope everyone can join us at that event as well. And Mariana, thank you so much for taking this time today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.